Hi, this is Judeo Christian, and this is my podcast known as The Barbarians. And you can find me on Substack, Spotify, iHeart, and also on Apple. And you can also read my writings there. And please subscribe and take a look at my work. Today's episode is not about policy or disagreement. It's not about routine shift in military leadership. It's about something far more dangerous, deliberate reshaping of the U.S. Armed Forces into an ideological weapon, one driven with dangerous intent. It's one that's bent on loyalty, faith, and a worldwide view that sees restraint as weakness and conquest as destiny. And on my website, The Barbarians, and on this particular site, this is about how Pete Hegseth, the President's Secretary of War, helped turn the world's most powerful military fighting force, the United States military, into a tool for purges, crusades, and geopolitics fantasies. Let's get into it. After the 2024 election, the president tapped Pete Hegseth to lead the Department of War. Before it was known as Department of Defense. Since he's taken office, he changed the title to the Department of War. And right away, the contrast that he showed compared to the past differed more than at any other time in the history of our country and our country's military. He initiated a sweeping purge of senior military leadership and targeted removal of anyone who perceived as a malingerer or someone who wasn't quite connected to the president's agenda as the enemy. And he did everything he could to purge them out, no matter how many years of service they had, no matter how much effort they had made, no matter how many sacrifices in their years of service in the military they had given, still they're purged out. People like General Charles Q. Brown, Jr., Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Lisa Fanchetti, Chief of Naval Operations, and the first woman to ever be the head of Naval Operations, General David Alville, Air Force Chief of Staff, Rear Admiral Jamie Sands of the Naval Special Warfare Command. And these officers were dedicated with years of sweeping service, institutional knowledge, and a commitment to diversity and inclusion and the qualities that the new administrator viewed as simply as liabilities. Critics called it ideological cleansing. Supporters called it restoring discipline. The administration called it an alignment. But the message was unmistakable. Loyalty mattered more than experience. Obedience more than the law. Hegseth cultivated a public persona built on toughness and joining the troops in physical training projects, martial vigor, and learning how to be a nationalist in theme. This wasn't accidental. It was a branding plan set up by the Trump administration in Article 2025. He framed the military not as diverse. Its institutions were not for just defending the nation, but a pluralistic nation, a nation that was built on a small, slim brotherhood of those with the sameness of each other. And religion became the basis for this plan. Inside the Pentagon, this worldview hardened into policy. Portraits like the figures of Jackie Robinson and Harvey Milk were removed from service academies. Transgender service members were purged out. DEI programs were dismantled, and a new curriculum was formed. The emphasis became that of a warrior culture, a euphemism for ideological confrontation and conformity. Hegseth openly declared that our diversity is our strength was a dumb concept. He insisted that the only sameness, cultural, religious, and political, could preserve this military power. And at the center was a sense of sameness, and the sameness was devoted around Christianity, not as a personal faith, but as a governing body for all those who served. It also would mean that certain members of different religious faiths, in a sense, would be blocked out. And even those in different racial bases would also be blocked out. Prayer meetings became mandatory in all but name. The communion and the Reformed Evangelical Church, such as known as the Creek, emerged as the ideological backbone of this department. It wasn't a subtle move, it was a transformational move that was transformed throughout the United States military. And in some cases, it became a crusading force, one that saw global conflict not as geopolitical, but as a spiritual warfare. Hegseth himself was viewed as a person who wanted to reshape the military internally. He was pushing at the president towards this radical vision of American power in the Western Hemisphere. And the Trump administration, along with President Trump, was convinced that America would be more than just a superpower. A superpower wouldn't be based on diplomacy, a superpower based on its ability to push around and stop and destroy anyone who got in its path. He told the president that the U.S. military could seize control of the entire hemisphere outright. And the president took that and ran with it, and publicly mused about absorbing Canada as the 51st state, turning Greenland into the northernmost post of the United States. Canada called it the threat to sovereignty. NATO condemned it, and the American public rejected it. But Hegseth supported it. He believed in it, and told the president that the U.S. had the right to dominate weaker nations simply because we could. This wasn't foreign policy. It was an imperial, nostalgic, dressed up as a strategy. And it didn't stop there. The administration escalated military actions in the Caribbean, in South America, and it began with the blockade in Venezuela. U.S. strikes destroyed 48 boats and killed at least 163 people. There were 2 survivors, and then there was an initial second attack, where everyone could see in the second strike as 2 men clung to the side of a boat and were killed instantly as a bomb struck it. There were calls for human decency. There were calls for even war crimes. But no action was taken. None within the administration and none within the U.S. Congress in any shape, form, or fashion. We were just left to the disdain for what had been done. Hegseth defended it. He said he would do it again if he had the same situation all over again. Even when they were reminded about the rules of the sea, that you never leave a destitute man or person when you have the right or the chance to save them. But it didn't matter. That would show up again later on in Iran, when for the first time since World War II, the United States Navy sunk a battleship. An Iranian battleship was sunk. 82 men died on that day, and there was no effort whatsoever to save the survivors who floated to the surface. When Admiral Alvin Halsey, a seasoned commander and one of the few black admirals in the United States Navy, questioned the legality of some of the actions that were taken by Hegseth, he was pushed out. His 3-year term lasted just 1 year, and eventually he would leave the United States service after more than 20 years. By 2025, the administration's focus shifted to Iran, a long-standing flashpoint, but now reframed through a religious lens. Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, under immense pressure from home, pushed for a strike. The president was eager for a show of strength by the United States, and he was receptive. And so was Hegseth. He saw Iran not as a geopolitical adversary, but as an enemy of the Christian culture's civilization. He described the conflict as a modern crusade, a battle between Judeo Christian heritage and Islamic theology. Despite intelligence assessments showing that Iran was not close to fielding a nuclear weapon, the administration pressed forward. On February 28th of 2025, Operation Epic Fury began. Massive aerial bombardments targeted assassination. Thousands were killed in Iran and Lebanon. Millions were displaced. Israel's bombardment of Lebanon daily, and the U.S. destroyed Iran's Navy and Air Force and other defenses. Yet Iran did not collapse. Its people rallied its government, and they survived. A ceasefire would eventually occur on April 8th, a pause in the destruction, but the administration called it only temporary. Hegseth insisted that the U.S. was ready for any action. He claimed the victory was a divine mandate. He claimed the war was a gift from God. Even the Pope condemned him, saying those who kill indiscriminately have blood on their hands. The administration responded with fury. A war of words erupted. A surrealistic clash began between the President of the United States government, and the Pope. Inside the Pentagon, the consequences were immense. Hegseth fired the Secretary of the Navy. He fired the Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George, and anyone who questioned the war or the president was quickly removed from office. The Department of War became a theocratic echo chamber, guided by a man who saw himself as a modern Savonarola, purging the unfaithful and enforcing ideological purity, claiming divine justification for violence. And like Savonarola, Hegseth believed that he was doing God's work. This is the story of how a single figure empowered by a president who valued loyalty above law reshaped the U.S. military into an ideological instrument. This is a story about purges, crusades, and the corrosion of the democratic guardrails. It is a story about what happens when faith becomes policy, when the power becomes righteous, and when the war becomes a calling. And it's a warning, because once the military is reshaped around ideological beliefs, it doesn't easily return to neutrality. This has been the Barbarians, and you can find it on Substack, iHeart, and Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And please subscribe, share, and stay vigilant. This is Judeo Christian for the Barbarians. Thanks. I'll see you down the road.